Hearthstone Grandmasters, thank you so much for joining us yet again. We are here with our first match of the day here, Pacific, before we send you over later to Europe and then Americas. We're going to be finding out all three of our representatives across all three of the regions going to the World Championships later this year. Because, of course, if you're unaware, this is what this kind of all building towards. At the end of it, we're going to have 6 representatives, 2 from each region, and then, of course, the 2 representatives from China who ended up with Lion being our champion last year. Very, very exciting stuff. We're seeing Hearthstone history in the making here, Gia. And che0nsu and che0nsu are both trying to write their name in the history books.
For sure. che0nsu himself had a Worlds appearance. I'm sure he's looking to actually take home the title because across probably all the Hearthstone community, if they think of who's the best player in APAC, if they're not in APAC themselves, most people would answer che0nsu, I would say, pretty confidently. I think that we have a whole new crop of fresh talent, or freshly hardworking talent, I would say. The new Grandmasters in Kin and Possessi have put on a great show. We have che0nsu working at its hardest nowadays.
Yep.
And I think the Japanese players also could give people a run for their money. But that's not to say that che0nsu should be taken lightly. This is still one of the guys that I feel I've been most impressed with any time I've seen him play Hearthstone.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it really exemplifies that, you know, in life you can't have the good without the bad, because with some of the other players, we've seen them make some misplays. So when they're playing really well, we're like, brilliant, this is much more on form. This is great stuff we're seeing from them. Whereas with che0nsu, we're not really seeing many bad plays, to be honest. There's nothing really to compare it against because he's just consistently playing solid Hearthstone. So it kind of just evens out at, yeah, this is just che0nsu. He just plays good Hearthstone at this point. It's what you expect. But I fully agree. Always a front runner to end up going to the World Championships, potentially, like you said, being the world champion later on this year. And having said that, he is still showing himself as, at the very least, marching to the beat of his own drum. I was going to say being at the cutting edge of Hearthstone ban theory with leaving up the warrior again, but it's still yet to be decided if this is actually a good strategy. We'll have to hear che0nsu's words if he is able to come out on top.
Yeah, I would love to actually ask him about it, but of course we can't let the players divulge their strategies when they're still in the things. But for now, we'll see if that manages to get the job done versus che0nsu with the Highlander Hunter, Pain Warrior, and Galakrond Secret Rogue. I mean, among these 3 decks, the Warrior just stands out to me as gonna win a game for sure. As far as this untested, or at least between you and I, Rogue goes, I feel it could go either way. And Highlander Hunter, particularly yesterday, we've seen it struggle for many players.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the big difference for the Rogue is against the Druid. That feels like, if not the main reason that you're putting in questing adventurers, a big side benefit of putting them in. Because, you know, I got a couple of hands when we were testing this matchup where I was like, okay, I have prep, backstab, shadow step, and a questing. I'm just going to play all my cards. They don't do anything, but it gave me a 6/6. Either this wins or it doesn't. And a fair amount of the time, it does. Druid doesn't have that much removal. Against Rogue, they're not keeping removal because they want to be looking for the ramp, the Glowfly Swarm, the Fungal Fortunes. So I think here for che0nsu, even though you're banking generally on having a very good matchup with the Druid against the Rogue, this could be a stumbling block for him now.
Yeah, it kind of harkens back to that matchup between Rogue versus Quest Druid in the Evolved Shaman meta, where the Rogue generally just wanted to build an Edwin or a questing adventure, because without those win conditions, they always fall behind in the mid game. It's just now that the mid game is in the form of Glowfly Swarms instead of Oasis Surgers. Still very similar, so I can't wait to see if we're that particular matchup later on. But of course, we are going to start off with the unbanned decks for both players that you might want to ban in a different universe: Demon Hunter and Warrior.
Oh yes, this is, I think, talking back to yesterday's strategy, we saw Rivius also leaving up the Warrior, and I think it was in no small part because he didn't bring his Demon Hunter. You know, as the only player to not bring Demon Hunter this week, I think it was no surprise that he was also one of the few players to leave up Warrior, because this is a terrible matchup for the Demon Hunter. I was saying that on my climb to Legend with Demon Hunter, I was having a pretty good win rate versus the Warrior. I felt like the average ladder Warrior didn't completely understand the matchup. And even then, Sotul was like, Derek, you're an idiot. You've been high rolling like crazy. It doesn't even come close to being favored, even against a Warrior player that doesn't know what they're doing. And looking at the stats, he's right. Even if you're not against che0nsu, one of the best players in Asia Pacific, you're still not looking to be in a good spot at all as the Demon Hunter.
One comparison I will draw, though, between you and Surrender, aside from queuing up this matchup, is that he's still running Crimson Sigil Runner, a card which a lot of players have cut from their lists. I think che0nsu has popularized re-including it and not including any of that Volpera Scoundrel nonsense, none of the Blowtorch Saboteurs. Surrender is just going for the tried and true old list.
Yeah, I mean, I started off at first playing the list that I think it was Cursed, a Greek Hearthstone player put out, with double Bone Chewer Brawler, very popular now, and a Guardian Orc Merchant. Wasn't having too much success with it personally. Then I switched over to che0nsu's list, obviously very well-known Chinese Hearthstone player, who is running the 2 Spectral Sights and the 2 Crimson Sigil Runners, very heavy on the card draw, which I found suited my playstyle that little bit more. But getting into the specifics of this game now, Gia, che0nsu already has double Armorsmith, which is a lot of the time one of the best cards in the matchup. Does this mean he's just off to an incredibly good start?
It is one of the best cards in the matchup, but similar to Risky Skipper, it's not one of the best cards you want in the early game. I feel that as Warrior, the ideal hand still starts with the same game plan for other matchups, which is cycle with the Corsair Cash, get your buffed up weapon online, or if you're a real god, you go for the early Warball Challenger and just blow them out with the tempo. And then later on, if the Demon Hunter is forced off the board and has to rely on going face to get the job done, that's when you put down the Armorsmiths and just completely pull them under them because they can't get the burst done against all that armor. In this situation for che0nsu, he's not got a better play, so I don't think it's wrong for him to just go for the Armorsmith, especially with 1 in hand, and just the 1/4 stat line is pretty tough for Demon Hunter to deal with. But I think Surrender would be relatively happy to see that he could deal with 1 early.
Yeah, and I mean, Surrender here, this Armorsmith is incredibly annoying. I was about to suggest he could go for Crimson Sigil Runner into the Battle Mage into Coin I-Beam, then I realized I'm an idiot, and of course that's not possible. One of the problems with Crimson Sigil Runner, and why personally I think it's not really worth running in the deck. But the Armorsmith on its own is just very annoying here, because it represents Inner Rage, it represents Rampage, it represents Bloodsworn Mercenary.
And for che0nsu, we could see a very interesting high tempo play. Normally, you want to save that Bloodsworn Mercenary to copy something higher value. The Blood Boil Brute in hand is a great candidate for that, or even Bomb Wranglers, which are very annoying to stave off. But for che0nsu, I don't mind the look of him just trading into a Sigil Runner and trying to get the board by copying a 1/3 Armorsmith.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest, I think it's insane on this turn. I think how you go about it is a little bit more questionable, because clearly you want the Battle Rage to come down on the following turn. That's what this is setting up for, in addition to just being a very powerful play right now. So do you hold back the Inner Rage because it lowers the health on both your minions, and instead say just bump into one of the Sigil Runners and then copy?
It's a really tough question. I mean, I gotta be honest, I didn't even see the Inner Rage line immediately, but the fact that there is a minion with higher than 1 attack makes all the difference, because the second that you let Demon Hunter take trades without actually having to give up their own minions, that's when you fall behind. So I ultimately like where che0nsu landed, and the line that you suggested of going for that Inner Rage copy.
Yeah. It's tough. I agree, because it has to be very specific cards to punish this, and it's the kind of cards that Surrender has shown he doesn't have in hand, like Twin Slice, in order to get extra damage, which I think would probably have come down in some capacity on the previous turn to kill off the Armorsmith. And so there's a decent chance that at least some of this sticks around until the following turn.
Right. I think the 3/3 Armorsmith will live to see another day. Oh, he's getting rid of both of them and instead leaving up the Bloodsworn. I was wondering if he would want to preserve extra 1/1 there and instead leave up the 3/3 and kill off the 2/2. But of course, removing all the damaged minions from the Warrior side is a huge pain for them. They can't get the payoff from the Blood Boil Brute, from the Battle Rage. So it gets a great call from Surrender. And this happens to look like one of those strange pan-outs in this matchup where Demon Hunter actually outvalues Warrior.
Which is why I love the Battle Rage coming down here. It's not amazing, you know, you're not drawing 5 cards off of it like you always want to do, but no Risky Skipper in hand, no way of drawing it currently available. I think, wow, just going for this 2-card draw for 2 mana is more than good enough. And now with Corsair Cash, Blood Boil ready to come down over the next few turns, and still an Armorsmith in hand, I think che0nsu is looking in a great spot.
Yeah, the Corsair cache is the real kicker here. If it draws him Ankar, suddenly he is just far in the lead, being able to keep cycling on top of having that early board, and he's in no danger of total being depleted anytime soon. But Surrender is the counterpunch now, getting a very sturdy board, which after this trade, just the Sky Raider can't kill off either of the threats here. Whew.
That is a very interesting find. We're getting closer here for che0nsu to be able to get down a Blood Boil Brute on this turn. It's not quite there, so deviating does make sense, but it's definitely something he should consider every turn.
Surrender hates to see it with this attack on the Battlefiend. I think we're going to see Inner Rage used for trading purposes here. I wonder if he might have wanted to hold on to it and instead just leave up another 2-2. But I think che0nsu is confident in the amount of resources that he has in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, this just clears off as much damage as possible, and it's probably not going to be necessary from here on in because at the moment, he's just doing okay. You know, the lackeys, the Warm Wall challengers should be able to clear off everything in combination with the weapon that Surrender can play for the next few turns. So he's just buying time until Risky Skipper comes down and locks out the game.
I mean, I actually assess this the opposite way, that because he has a lot of time, as far as I see it from his health total, I think that he could have held on to Inner Rage for more value later on, say if a Bomb Wrangler comes off the top, or just another guaranteed minion to be damaged if, say, he gets the second Battle Rage without the Risky Skipper. It's very difficult to assess this early on because the draws off the top determines which way his game plan goes.
Well,
but that's worth noting that both Inner Rages are gone now.
Yes, and I think the point I was trying to make is there's a very discrete difference between being able to control the board and having enough health, because obviously Demon Hunter can push a lot over the top without having to have board control, and therefore I think sacrificing removal cards just to immediately save your health is probably worth it. Wow.
Whoa, this knife drop is nuts! What the heck? And he got the Fly Booter a while ago for the perfect result. We're playing Zoo Warrior now, Derek.
Yeah, this is a well-oiled machine at this point. This is absolutely disgusting for che0nsu.
Okay, well, Surrender has this Altruist, which is his best answer to the board, but it's starting to look like if he just extra resources now, then Surrender could get outvalued. I wonder if he has the time to just take the card draw and build up to a bigger Altruist.
I grow impatient.
So quite clearly here, we're looking at a fairly powerful Altruist turn that could come down with obviously the I-Beam, even the Spectral Sight as well, as I count it, for minimum 5 procs, which is a full board clear.
True, and he's even got the Twin Slice. This actually works out perfectly in terms of hand positioning for Surrender. So he's able to swing it back.
Ooh.
And the skull is absolutely huge here, because che0nsu will be able to clear off the Altruist just with his weapon proc. So Surrender would need a further train of threats beyond that Glaive-Bound Adept.
And this is the thing, right? che0nsu can keep clearing the board turn after turn, but he's starting to take a lot of damage in the process. He needs to find some of these armor generation cards, which, I mean, I say some of these cards, he needs Risky Skipper in order to just get this Armor Smith down and get back up to a healthy life total.
And beyond just a Skipper, he probably needs the other Battle Rage as well. Because after healing up, well, it looks like Surrender will be able to take back the value since he has hit the Skull of Gul'dan and the Spectral Sight and the Chaos Strike. Well, it's got a shot at the Skipper at the very least.
Yeah, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. But if he misses... I mean, I guess if he misses, he can just Blood Boil Brute and trade in. It's not the end of the world.
The thing is, the ordering was kind of weird there because Skipper, if you didn't hit into the Glaive-Bound, you would have had to play 4 minions with it, which is, I think, not quite sure if that was possible with the mana.
Well, my thinking was that he could go Risky Skipper, Armor Smith, and then have enough mana from the discount to still play the Blood Boil.
Right, and then commit the Lackey. Okay.
Yeah.
But we see che0nsu holding back on the Skipper. He can get more armor later and go for Hopeful Rage off the top.
Surrender obviously has a very powerful Skull of Gul'dan here, but quite clearly he's interested in, I think, setting up the Warglaives on this turn, not only to clear off the Blood Boil Brew, but also to set up for clearing anything else that comes down on the following turn whilst his Skull is in play. I like this a lot.
And the use combined with Chaos Strike just means he gets to push a lot of damage to the face. Very relevant here. As far as Surrender sees it, che0nsu only has one Armor Smith left.
Hero Power's last just because he's cool like that and doesn't want to sink one extra damage.
Decision as to whether he wants to sink a charge into the Lackey, which means he's not losing any damage to the face in the immediate, but across multiple turns, he loses some. Okay. Armor for days.
Yep, one very simple game plan now.
And bombs.
I wonder if this was the correct order. I wonder if he was supposed to go Armor Smith first, and then Bomb Wrangler, and then Egg, or Pirate last, because then more of his board survives and he still makes a lot of armor. Okay, he's just holding back on the Egg, so this is fine.
Okay.
Alas, poor
Oh, Surrender's got his refill now, still has that Warglaives equipped. Ooh. Well, from Surrender's perspective, as soon as he kills this Armor Smith, that's both of them gone. So
yes,
the health gain for Warrior is just going to come from the natural hero power now. So he has to figure out the math as to whether this hand can get there over a few turns. As far as it stands, it's looking a little bit short. But of course, he's got draws off the top. He has the Metamorphosis, the second Glaive Bound still in the deck.
But then again, at the same time, there are many, many very good draws at this point for che0nsu. Grommash is 10 burst damage. A Battle Rage would be insane. Even just a Rampage to push extra damage on this turn.
Time grows short. Hide behind your circles. I will still find you.
So we do see Surrender respecting all of those possibilities, going for a clear on the immediately threatening minions, and just building a board that's awkward to remove, given that che0nsu has already played a Risky Skipper. I like this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he knows there's a decent chance that a Risky Skipper is in hand, so he kind of needs to play around Risky Skipper Grom, and this does that perfectly. It's very unlikely that Surrender could even possibly die this turn.
Whoa! Not only did che0nsu get Knife Jugglers, he got Bomb Jugglers as well.
That was disgusting. That could be huge.
Dimensional Ripper could pull a Grom?
Oh my god.
I mean, this Cleave isn't doing very much, and the Boom Squad just looks so low value.
Really? I think I definitely like the Boom Squad.
Okay, if you're getting that size of a dragon. Oh, okay. More spell. Oh, Battle Rage!
But there's nothing damaged, right?
Not this turn, but maybe next. The Egg is gonna stick.
I agree, it's the best. No weapons left. And ramming speed not getting there, but Skull of Gul'dan, we're running through the possibilities for lethal now.
So of course there's 6 already showing if he just goes for Glaives here, but that wouldn't be enough mana to go for the Skull. I think he does just rip the Skull here.
Yeah, I mean, he's wondering about possibilities for lethal. He does need to be afraid because he knows there's a Pirate in hand, a random spell in hand, and a mystery card in hand. If he doesn't find some kind of freeze or heal, that could equal lethal.
Oh, this is huge, though. He gets both the heal and a Metamorphosis, can set up damage across 2 turns, and get himself back up to 17. So you have to be scared of the just 10 from Grom, because both of the Inner Rages have been used.
I am complete.
And there won't be enough mana to go Risky Skipper, Grom, and Rampage.
And
so as long as he goes up,
yeah, there is still the slight potential that he dies on this turn, but he puts himself at the maximum possible chance of that not happening.
If the bomb is insane and it's, say, some Kor'kron combo,
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's 4 damage face, then he has exact lethal with Risky Skipper Grom. But, of course, not available. Corsair Cash, a useless, completely dead card here.
I hate to see it. So we could look at Lackey into Blazing Battle Mage.
Yeah.
Oh, not where he wanted it to go.
That seemed wrong.
Yeah, I think you trade the bomb into the remaining one, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Execute.
Boom Scheme is armor, technically, if you want a little bit of extra survivability, but yeah.
I must choose.
He just needs
So
the
he just
hero
plays
power
the
at the
Boil
moment to
Blue-
survive.
Yeah.
Yep.
Blood Boil and Hero Power.
This works too.
Probably gets him more damage across 2 turns.
Oh no, yeah, and then the hero power as well for surrender.
Yeah.
Can close
But
things
that-
out.
Man, it got close there at the end, but we did see that strange pan out where Demon Hunter actually can run the warrior dry out of value when warrior is forced to commit at Battle Rage too early.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to know when the best timing for Battle Rage is, because when you don't have the skipper in hand, you feel like, oh, I better just take the 2 that's guaranteed. But then when you do get the skipper, suddenly it's just not enough value later on.
Yeah, it's a really tough situation to be in because you need to be balancing a bunch of things. A lot of the time, even though you're trying to mitigate as much damage as possible as the warrior, there's situations where you can look at going for example, when there was the Glaive-bound Adept and the 2/1/1s on board, maybe swinging into it in order to clear it off with the Risky Skipper, which means you take more damage, of course, but you can maybe then gain that back up and keep a Blood Boil Brute on board. Because you can't just be kind of removing for the entire game plan. We've consistently seen with a lot of decks that does not work against Demon Hunter. You have to present your own threat nice and quickly, which obviously che0nsu was not able to do.
That's right. And even though the definition of value, I probably went overboard on it by suggesting Dimensional Ripper there. I was tunnel visioned on copying Grom and Korkron. There were a lot of whiffs. We could have seen the second Bloodsworn or a Terran or Warmaul Challenger not particularly useful in that situation. But it really does go to show that in this meta, especially against Demon Hunter, the premier aggro deck, as you said, it's not all about removing. It's trying to race them towards the end of the game when you get that small window after wresting the board from their control.
Yeah, unfortunate there for che0nsu. And as with every single warrior game in the history of Hearthstone, there's always something you can do. I'm sure he'll be looking back and trying to find ways that he can improve on that one. But he, of course, has another shot at taking a win with the warrior, still very likely to get it over the finish line at some point over the course of this series. But before he's going to be doing that, we are going to go to a short break before we come back with the continuation of Surrender versus che0nsu. We'll be right back. You are watching Hearthstone Grandmasters here for the Asia Pacific region. We are in our first match of the day between che0nsu and che0nsu. And after a pretty unfortunate loss there for che0nsu with the Warrior, you're always expecting to get a win against the Demon Hunter. It puts che0nsu off to a great start now. He's, I don't think, planning to go with the defeat Warrior at every point along the way. He's not hard targeting it with his lineup, but it definitely helps when you can steal a win against it at some point along the way.
Yeah, that is absolutely huge, especially since we keep saying that Warrior is Demon Hunter's worst matchup there. And now we see che0nsu actually deviating away from the Warrior for game 2 and moving on to his Rogue, which we have been very excited to see. I can't wait to see also how che0nsu in particular pilots this. You and I in our testing, and with Raven and Sottle, I don't think we were all particularly sure about how all in you're supposed to go on the questings, at least in the Druid matchup, but we're going to see it lined up against che0nsu's Hunter.
We are indeed. It's kind of the bane of Rogue in a way at the moment, continues to be the lack of healing, which is the main thing that Hunter is trying to exploit, I find, in this matchup. But it's not so simple as like the Face Hunter deck that just runs over Rogue. I feel like there's a lot more counterplay available to this Rogue deck.
Very true. They're able to develop boards because mainly of that questing adventure, and of course good old Eddie VC. If that gets down on board early before Rot Nest Drake is available, and if there's no Zephyrus, sometimes that can just steal games away.
It can indeed. che0nsu holding on to the ambush here. This is something I still am very interested in, is holding on to the secrets, because generally with any kind of a secret deck you're playing, be it, you know, the old mysterious challenger paladin or the tempo mages along the way that had some secret synergy in them as well, generally you didn't keep the secrets in your starting hand. In those decks you kind of had ways to tutor them out, which was, you know, the main reason why you weren't doing so. But even then, I feel like it's one of the less powerful cards in the deck and lower win rate cards in the deck. But I guess Ambush specifically, just as a slightly delayed 2/3 poisonous for 2 mana, is good enough.
To me, this indicates that che0nsu's mindset in the matchup is reactive. Ambush, as you said, is a good enough reactive card. You can definitely expect Hunter to be playing minions into those follow-up turns, but we could also be seeing from che0nsu just the mindset that there's many payoff cards to be had if he has a secret, the Black Shock Stunner being the main one, and also, of course, Hanar. Fairy Dragon on 2, always premium against Rogue.
Yeah, I mean, this whole curve is pretty insane. It's kind of to the point where I feel like you can just save Zephyrus for a later point, because Fairy Dragon into Zix or into question mark, you know, you figure that out later, is good enough. You can save Zephyrus for Power of the Wild if you have a wide board, removal if you need that for an Edwin or something of that nature.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point that Zephyrus is often held for when it actually makes a bad turn good, as opposed to making a good turn better, or at least a sequence of 2 turns better. From Surrender, the immediate impact of Fairy Dragon is, of course, better to backstab and coin seal fate.
Don't let the door hit you.
So he gets to have his cake and eat it, but che0nsu putting on the not the pressure, but just reversing the tempo entirely now. Look at this usage.
Don't let the
Black
door
Shock
hit you.
This is absolutely insane. Even with the recent nerf to Blackjack Stunner, meaning these cost 4 and 3 instead of 5 and 4, it's still ridiculous. Look at the tempo swing that was gained for only really having to expend a couple of cards, and you get a 1/2 out of the deal as well. And for che0nsu, he can carry on in pretty good fashion. The Miscreant means he won't be running out of things to spend his mana on anytime soon. He's looking great.
It did look like a pretty expensive use of resources, but che0nsu spent all of that to make sure that he gets a hold of the board, and staying ahead versus Hunter is the way to win the matchup. He does have that follow-up you were talking about. Oh, doesn't even have to ram his Poisonous into the Zixor now if he doesn't want to.
Interesting. che0nsu loves these ambushes, man. I'll tell you that, because I was looking at a couple of different powerful plays there. Like, could potentially even go for Witchy Lucky to upgrade the Poisonous, but I guess this is pretty good to have on board. Like, if they go Rot Nest Drake here, it's pretty good half the time.
Yeah, I think che0nsu is recognizing that Ambush is a card that when your opponent is ahead, they can pretty freely play around it, just like all of the
Right.
secrets. They can just avoid playing minions until they immediately have an answer for the poisonous, whereas che0nsu is making it as difficult as possible
True.
for Surrender to get rid of the current threats. I actually really like this approach.
It's a very cool way of playing out the matchup, that's for sure. But Surrender now, well, he has the Zephyrus. I suppose that's the first thing to look at. Is it going to offer him anything half decent here? Not that I'm seeing, not Zephyrus worthy.
Nah, it would probably give SI7 here to deal with the ambush, and then of course Surrender has to be worried about what the second secret is. Tests it with the Felma first. Gets the news. It's not dirty tricks. che0nsu's secret package is 2 each of those 2, and not Bamboozle. Of course, you don't want to be running that when you have Questings and Edwin in the list.
Man, che0nsu can do some pretty insane things now, just going super wide on the board. The generation does not stop either with all of these lackeys. This is just some old school rogue action, relying on the power of lackeys. It's been a while.
It's great. He's just got the whole evil gang together, the miscreants and the assassins. che0nsu is just doing the ideal rogue thing. Oh my god. che0nsu's so happy about
Let's
it.
go,
I love it
che0nsu.
that he's unapologetically happy. Love to see it.
Damn right. Why shouldn't he be? He is on the verge of going through to the semi-finals on Sunday. And this is what che0nsu, I think, has his mind set on. For too long, he has been worrying about potentially going down to the relegation bracket. Now, he can have his eyes set on greatness and getting through to the global finals or the world championships.
Surrender is gonna make it as difficult for him as possible, but man, how do you even play this turn? The Unleash the Hounds can soften up the board, but I feel like where Surrender's mind at is trying to swing back with Zephyrus Brawl on the follow-up, in which case you don't want to clear that many minions.
Right. Oh man, it's so rough. Just one extra turn is what he needs to buy himself here, really? To go like Zephyrus Unleashed Death.
So by that measure of thinking, he could just go for the death now and Unleash later on. But it looks like we're gonna see Surrender just try and soften up the board.
He can still kill it, I mean, if he wants to, with
Yeah.
the kill command, of course.
Very relevant.
He needs to be thinking about the Felmore becoming active next turn as well, of course.
So preemptively clearing off the poison to me indicates that he's trying to set up for a Faceless Corruptor turn later on. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Illegal!
Absolutely illegal. Oh!
He can even evolve his Miscreant?
Yeah, I mean, I think that
I'm not
was
sure about
probably
buffing
the
that
wrong
one.
target there. I mean, unless he just wants to shoot it down.
Okay, sure. Not even gonna evolve. Just go wide as
Fair
possible.
enough. Yeah, I mean, I guess with the amount of Kobold lackeys he has in hand, this is fine. Ho!
This Belmont's been watching the AVT videos, Derek.
Absolutely. But now, Gia, after all of this, Surrender has been very, very careful about throwing out his Zephyrus too early. He saved it for now, and at the very least, we're looking at a brawl to try and clear up the board.
Yep. It's getting to the point where Brawl looks better than Shadow Word Horror to me, like taking the
Ruin,
2 in 5 to actually win the Brawl, as opposed to ending up with a guaranteed 3-2 versus a 3-4.
Yeah.
Looks better.
Yeah, you got to be getting risky now. Things are going very wrong here for Surrender. The alternative things to consider is like if you can manipulate it to give you silence and play Faceless Corruptor as well.
No Brawl offered?
Doesn't even offer Brawl
Oh
here. What?
my gosh, Zephyrus! Go back to school.
Ho ho!
That's awful. So now he just has to take the Ruin, right? I don't think he can afford to leave this 5-7 up.
Yeah,
Gosh, painful.
that is very, very yucky. Oh my
Dark in the sky.
Off the
He
top.
even hits Galakrond
Of course.
on curve, off the top. I mean, Surrender at this point could just have a little bit of a chuckle because he knows he's just been absolutely dunked on.
He's just SMHing to oblivion. Okay. Well, this is a swing. Surrender finally gets a hold of the board, but che0nsu held on to this flick.
Yeah. And it's going to kill not one, but both of these Faceless Corruptors. I guess he's still missing out on some of like the big finisher cards, Bronx, you know, maybe a Hanar in order to generate a whole bunch of value, but just the hero power alone, I think should be enough to keep che0nsu very, very firmly in the lead.
Even evolve this flick, and I really like the pick of Cycle here, even though Shiv is slow. I think that the only way che0nsu loses now is if he just whiffs draw after draw. Let's say he just gets a bunch of secrets. Or the Hanar without... Wait, there is a secret in hand. Never mind.
Yeah. The only thing he should be afraid of now is, of course, Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, which is why he was trying to go for the biggest minion possible here to set up lethal. Obviously, this is a pretty disastrous couple of minions. He went from bad to worse after this 8-drop. Can't even remember the name of that one, the new Hunter Legendary that has seen 0 play at all.
That is the name of that. Good job
Ah,
there.
yes. But it's...
Okay, Surrender takes those.
Yeah, the thing is, it's not even the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. It's even worse, but that doesn't matter because che0nsu just hit the dream. That's just lethal.
Yes, it is. 8 damage on the board. Sorry, 12. 8 additional, and then the Lackey for lethal.
It was, Gia, a very cool game that we get to see there by che0nsu. Obviously, he hit pretty much the dream hand, I think it's fair to say. You know, he got all the Lackey generators, huge amounts of board control at the start, but it all came off the back of keeping that secret. Yes, he did get the Blackjack Stunner plus the Shadow Step, which is a very fortunate outcome after keeping a secret. But he was playing to that possibility. He kept that dream alive by holding on to one of the secrets.
Yeah, it makes me reflect on whether we were too hard on Staz, for example, for keeping Ambush, although that was a different matchup and he himself was on the play and not on the coin. I suspect that having the coin for Rogue, of course, for all of Hearthstone, it's been super relevant, but in the Mulligan in particular, it makes you feel more comfortable with keeping sub-ideal cards because you have still 3 slots to get back better cards, and you feel like if I just keep something that I can guaranteed play on turn 2 or coin out on turn 1 into a 2-drop, then that might just be good enough. But in any case, that is the Rogue for che0nsu getting the win there, and now we're following up with che0nsu's own Hunter against Surrender's Druid.
We are, Gia, and it's the slightly more old-school Druid. I think we're seeing a lot of players now going for the hybrid variant that Rivius brought this week. I think Tyler, one of the other APAC GMs who we won't be seeing this weekend, just hit rank 1 legend with the list. And so maybe next week in Masters Tour, Yongchupeng will be seeing a little bit more of that. But Surrender here was presented with a pretty spicy hand of Overgrowth and Mount Seller. But we've gone a lot higher up in terms of spiciness here, with the perfect hand.
Oh, yes, indeed. I think that according to the Japanese players, Alutemu and Gloria in particular, they feel that a big reason for why they bring Druid week to week to week is that it's favored not against the 2 best decks in the game, which is Warrior and Demon Hunter, but against common 3rd and 4th deck rings, which are Highlander Hunter and Highlander Rogue. And the reason that Druid can get there against Hunter even with a little bit of favor is the early Glowfly Swarms, which are very difficult for Hunter to answer unless they have Zephyrus.
And that is something that che0nsu is clearly holding on to here. He's going with development lines that put on a lot less pressure at the start, because this is a very big divergence point in the matchup. You can either go for maximum pressure right at the start of the game and hope that you get there before their Glowfly can pull back, or you go for a line where you can beat 1 Glowfly and then hope that that is enough to get you there.
The Zephyrus is relevant when it's playable alongside at least Lightning Storm, but when the Glowfly comes down on turn 3, suddenly that's shutting down all of the good responses from Hunter. It's before Faceless Corruptor can come online too and possibly swing back the board. This is real rough for che0nsu now. Are we looking at Betrayal?
Well, Betrayal or Cleave, they're the same thing, right? And they both clear off 2 minions.
Or just preemptive Holy Nova, but then you're not respecting any buff on the other side.
Or Sea Giant. That's
Huh.
actually pretty tempting, right?
Okay. It would cost
1.
right, so he can fit in tracking as well. Or even 0, right? After he attacks with Desert Sphere. Okay. I'm on board,
Yeah, that's right.
che0nsu.
Cost 0.
Yeah.
Or after he picks up a 1-drop.
Right.
That works too.
Yeah, I definitely like the Battle Mage right now as opposed to... Oh, okay, is he... Okay. Doesn't make a difference because he's not taken the 1-drop.
Yeah, what this does do is it means that Diving Griffin can actually still draw something after he sacrifices off Zixor, whereas otherwise it would be just a 3-mana 4-1, which is a pretty big consideration, I think.
Surrender has this Savage Roar available to use for face damage or for trading off.
What to do?
Or he could take the slow approach of just ramping right now, make sure the overflow is available next turn. He's worried about particularly rush minions from che0nsu because he did, I mean, of which all of them are in che0nsu's hand. I don't think there's a great way for Surrender to play around it.
Yeah.
Other than trading off, but then that makes his follow-up plays really weak.
I mean, it does, but they're not, like, devastatingly weak. If he just goes for Savage Roar here, and then he can go next turn Crystal Power to clear something off, plus the Overgrowth, like, he has reasonable plays for the next few turns.
Okay. You could just use it right now and take that trade like he did here to make sure that the Glowflies take not only a swing but also the Locust trade to remove. There's a turning point now though.
Yeah. Huge turning point he can go for. Developing the board really heavily here. If he gets a Dragon next turn, he could even go with Zixor into Scale Rider as well, because at the moment the only awkward thing for che0nsu is he wants this Zixor to die so that he can play the Diving Griffin and then draw Zixor Prime to hopefully lock out the game.
Big top deck for Surrender. They're getting the other Crystal Power, making sure that one of the Faceless is cleared off, because if he didn't have an answer, he was likely just going to heal it back up, but huge top deck for che0nsu as well.
Oh, now gets Scavenger's Ingenuity as well. So one of these cards out of Driving Griffin or Scavenger's Ingenuity is going to draw nothing. But, I mean, if he can get Zixor to die on the following turn and then draw into Scavenger's Ingenuity, that would be huge.
And he needs it to happen soon because he's going into 8 mana next turn, but it's not an available option. So I guess he's just going to develop it and try to pressure Surrender. But now Surrender has Mount Sellers. He has Ironbark, Innervate, a lot of shots at some Griffins of his own. Is that a Bog Beam? Oh, another Ironbark. Okay.
Only the finest creatures.
Oh! 6 stars for everyone?
Whoa!
I mean, he could double Ironbark this to immediately take a value trade. That is nuts. Mukla as well. Okay, 1 Ironbark plus power. Wait! Illegal!
Zixor, Mukla, Zixor. That is actually illegal.
Wait till you see this Griffin from the power buff.
I mean, I was going to say that che0nsu only has to survive 1 turn, and then he could just lock out the game with Zixor Prime next turn for 6/6s, but that's just not going to happen.
Imagine. I guess the consideration for Surrender here is instead of going for buff, he could go for 1 extra minion on the board with the Rising Winds, or even Cycle, but I feel that he has everything he needs in hand to win the game, right? He has Savage Roar and the buff, so
Agreed.
1 extra minion would allow him to still clear off the other Zixor and maintain all the minions on board.
Yeah, I think the question for him was actually whether or not he just went for the Savage Roar, because he could have taken some nice trades, you know, trading up into the Hungry Dragon, or the Big Ol' Whelp. But in the end, I can agree, you set up for the potential lethal next turn. It looks much more powerful.
You make a good point that there's probably still just lethal even without the Savage Roar given the size of this board, but I think Surrender knows that with Zephrys used, this board is just sticking around.
There is nothing that can be done. Oh my goodness. I mean, to be fair, I'm quite surprised that che0nsu managed to stay in the game this long against a Coin Innovate Glowfly Swarm after a Fungal Fortunes on 2. You just don't beat that.
Well, the Zixor manages to bite the dust finally.
Good job, Zixor. You managed to die.
Oh. As I can see it, 18 can be pushed face. Wait, is there some way to do this with killing off your own Porcupine? So if you go Roar and then trade Porcupine,
Oh my
and
god.
then push a lot face and then kill off the Porcupine, that's like another 5 damage, right? Wait.
What was that? 8, 13, 15. With the hero power, I think that actually was exact lethal.
Well, I'll have to go back and check the VOD. Surrender made the turn really quickly, but he had a reaction that I
13,
think
16.
wasn't quite sure.
I think you're right. I do actually think you're right.
It's funny, this type of play happened in EU
Right.
last night as well.
Yeah.
Falcon
Felky missed the
versus
lethal,
yeah.
Doesn't matter. Surrender's
Versus
able to
Huntress,
find
yeah.
it either way here
Yeah,
by
that works.
getting this out anyway with the buff. It does not matter. He got the lethal on this turn. Good job, Surrender. He goes up 2 games to 1, doing what Druid does best here in getting an absolutely disgusting starting hand. And while I think che0nsu approached that matchup very, very well, I liked the very unconventional pick of the Sea Giant there. It's generally not what you're going for. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure if that's what he was considering when he started off the turn. He thought about it for quite a long time after seeing the expected betrayal there, and ended up with a pretty good chance of just swinging back the board.
I mean, you and I expected Betrayal or Cleave. Maybe che0nsu was looking for that Sea Giant in particular. I think it was a pretty brilliant spot. Probably doesn't get there against even one more Glowfly on the board.
Yep.
But the fact that Surrender had 6 and che0nsu could manage to clear off 2 of them immediately while also developing the threat made all the difference in that game. But ultimately, couldn't get that Zixor on time. And well played to Surrender. We're going to game 4.
Yeah, the one thing that I think che0nsu maybe could have changed was instead of going big ol' whelp on turn 6, he could have gone playing out the Zixor, which even though it wouldn't have been able to die on the following turn, he didn't know that. Maybe there was a chance it could die and then he could draw out the Zixor Prime again. But sorry, I'm getting way too deep into that that situation there, as I think Sottle just gave us confirmation that that was lethal, even though the last time he said that to us, it was wrong because of board space.
Right.
But I am still going to go out on a limb and trust him there. But I mean, Surrender found the lethal anyway, so there's not really any point there.
From some additional card draw indeed, but now we are going into this matchup, which is, I want to say, contentious, because I feel that the players who are consistently bringing Highlander Hunter are the ones who end up leaving up Warrior every now and then.
Yeah.
But our
What,
stats would have it that Warrior is great in the matchup.
Yeah, at least in the sample size of this particular matchup in GM, which again, I don't think is especially high, but Surrender here has a fantastic start, even with the recent nerf to Scavenger's Ingenuity, with this just being a 4-6 now instead of a 5-7. It's still insane. Look at the start that Surrender's got himself off to here.
And he's drawn into a Felmaw kind of late, but I would still take that as opposed to just equipping a Stormhammer here. There's some consideration for pre-equipping Desert Spirit. That card is one that you would always like to have the mana spent for it out of the way, so you can combo into Faceless Corruptor and Varanus later on. That's one of the best ways to win the matchup, I find, is the big Varanus swing. But because neither of those are in hand, I was looking at playing a minion instead, but Surrender is going on the mega offensive.
Yeah, I love this game plan from Surrender. I think it really nicely accomplishes a couple of things. You have the opportunity, of course, to just go swing everything face, big ol' whelp, smash your opponent and go for the win. Or, of course, it can just function as very decent removal.
True enough. You're gonna see che0nsu get down the Blood Boil Brute for cheap, continue
big deal.
taking back the board.
Yeah, this swing for che0nsu is exactly what he needed. All of a sudden, he's in the driving seat yet again, and Surrender is kind of forced to stop pushing everything through to the face, or at the very least incentivized to. I won't say he can't keep going purely for damage, because with Corrosive Breath and Dragonbane, that's a lot of damage.
Yeah, the only fear of leaving up the skipper at this point is Armorsmith or Battle Rage. I guess it's one too many, but it always feels bad to have to expend damage into a skipper when it's already at 1 health. And in other pan now, it's just a pain for che0nsu because he'd like to develop any other minion, which would just get extra damage if the skipper's still on board.
I wonder. Time moves quickly.
Talking about Battle Rage, that's not even a big punish because if one minion comes down, it still ends up at 3 damage targets for the warrior because the skipper immediately dies. So I think you can justify leaving it up.
I mean,
really tough.
The problem with that is that, yes, Battle Rage is a consideration which would be bad, but it's also just buffing it up. It's like if the Rampage comes down, that's pretty scary as well. Then they can keep getting value out of the activations.
Whew. Another one for che0nsu. No Sky Raiders allowed here. Wow! che0nsu leaves it up as well.
Oh yes, he is gonna get out his sack it and sack it, as this big ol' whelp is not especially well positioned at the moment. I mean, Surrender can still just keep going face if he wants to here.
This is a very weird spot. Like, you could develop Desert Spear to give the Sacket possibly a worse target to bounce, but that means he doesn't get a swing with the Stormhammer. So, yeah, it's all going face.
This is just a face race
Okay,
here. Even without a dragon here, devastatingly for Surrender, it's still absolutely worth it.
No cheap minion for che0nsu. I mean, he could generate a Lackey, but then that means there's not enough mana to also play Battle Rage, so I like that he's deviating instead. Sacket remains a pain. Surrender. So we could just go for a clear here, just with the Faceless Corruptor. Means he doesn't have to tank anything. He could tank 5 and use Siamat instead and let the Siamat be immediately bounced back into hand, which you don't really want.
I mean, you can clear off the board though, right? Like, you just go rush Wind Fury and you... it seems good to me. I think you're just taking too much damage otherwise, right?
Yeah.
I wonder.
It's gotta be better.
there are
This Siamat
alternatives,
back
of
in
course.
hand is not necessary.
Yeah, it could be the Faceless Corruptor if he would rather just go for like Divine Shield Wind Fury next turn. It's definitely arguable that Siamat is more valuable. But in the end, yeah, it's just so clean on this turn.
Back to the drawing board now for che0nsu. Doesn't have many minions to get payoff with for this Battle Rage. And he's just dying is the big problem.
Show you who's boss.
Okay, welcome top deck.
Yeah, allows him to keep drawing. He needs to find that Armorsmith because while he is not dead at the moment, things are getting very, very close.
It's a rough final decision. Any 3 of the plays at the end there had some merit, some armor to keep him alive versus breakpoints from... I guess there isn't any... Oh my gosh.
Well, it puts him in a pretty good position against exactly that.
Yeah. Sorry, I was talking about the armor up. I don't know if that saved him from any lethal breakpoint. But yeah, the Rampage gives him best board presence, and the Corsair Cache would have helped him thin the deck towards Armorsmith, but that seems like the most marginal benefit. Oh man, the Dragon Vein, 1 out of 3 times it is a complete disaster if you hit the egg, right?
I wonder.
It's probably just Zixor and trade-off the Serpent Egg both halves.
But that feels awful. Like, everything feels so bad. I mean, you can go
Quickly.
Does it feel
faceless.
awful?
I mean, leaving up the risky skipper? Yeah.
I mean, it's just pushing lethal
Yeah.
next turn, possibly. Okay, I guess this is the safest way to go about it. It's still very threatening for Warrior. Yeah, I like this.
Yeah. I like it a lot. And so now Corsair Cash will only offer live wire lance, I believe, and he already has one in hand, so yeah, that makes sense.
Looking for Ethereal Lackey and some hope here, but we don't even get to see what the Lackey generated was. Surrender takes the series.
Oh.
He beat Warrior twice.
Right, this is the talking point here now, Gia, is consistently in the strategies where Warrior has been left up. Warrior has just been winning. It's not a huge sample size, but it's not a small sample size either. Warrior has consistently been showing that it is able to take out the decks in a leave Warrior up lineup. Surrender now is turning that all on his head, all on its head, I should say. I don't know if he's going to be standing on his head in joy, as he will be our player going through to the winner's bracket match to fight off against Alutemu. That was some pretty convincing Hearthstone there from Surrender. Very nicely done.
Very true. You mentioned standing on his head, though, and I just have to give shout outs to Tyler. He said he would have the biggest pop off ever if he managed to win the weekend, but unfortunately didn't get the win on his play in match. It's too bad, but I have no doubts that Surrender could surprise us with some gestures at the end of his gameplay. We've been seeing it from Alutemu, we've been seeing it from Possessi. Come on, Surrender, give something for the people.
Yeah, I mean, no shade to Surrender whatsoever, but I doubt